Guys, if you don't have the Reggie Nelson's Opening Doors book, you're doing it all wrong. This is a powerful, powerful book where Reggie actually literally lays his life story out bare for you guys to read to catch up on who he is and his journey, which we'll get into. But in your book, you talk about from young, you were like sort of that person that someone talks back to you, you want to grab them, rough them up a bit,
Yeah.
punch them. So where did this humility and humbleness like come from?
I, growing up, like you said, there were points in time when I couldn't control my anger, and I would resolve conflict in a certain way. But I always draw down this humility that you talk about on my upbringing, my family dynamic, and just understanding that where I am is for a greater purpose. Like, I'm not where I am to serve myself. You know what I mean? Like, I'm where I am because my faith allows me to understand that I'm here for like a greater purpose, and you know that where I am and where I'm going, there's more to it than just, oh, I'm here to be self-fulfilling. So I always try to remember that this isn't the end of the journey, and that you know I'm not here to almost bring praise upon myself, but it's here to either serve others or it fulfills a greater purpose. So for me, always try to remember, number one, my upbringing, and number two, why I'm here. Like, it's definitely for a greater purpose, as opposed to, yeah, I've arrived and here I am, and I'm XYZ person. It doesn't really work like that for me. And I feel like when it does, or if it does do that for me, then I think that's where the journey, and that's where the story stops, because that's when it's like the greater purpose then ends, if that makes sense.
Yeah, wow. So you're very much purpose driven, and like you talk about your upbringing. So literally from reading the book, I sort of immersed myself into your upbringing. So you grew up, on the estate. Was it Woolwich Estate, to be correct?
Yeah, a state in North Woolwich, yeah, so East London, council estate, yeah.
Yeah, and you went to school in like Newham, and like that was sort of your upbringing. And if anyone knows your story, like you really really loved football. You were used to chill around the block, as we should call it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just really, to me, when I was reading it, it was like, okay, I understand this. I can relate to this person. And you talk a lot about sort of this idea that the mentality in where you came from, lacked visibility to the, I'll call it the outside world, the corporate world. And I thought that was so fascinating because basically now, do you feel like you're kind of outside looking in?
Yeah, I, I, I do, to a point. I'm kind of speaking and being in a place of privilege now, because when I was at that point on the estate, there was no visibility, right? It was, you become a footballer, musician, or you go down the route of crime. And as you mentioned, football was almost my vice. That was the route that I was potentially going to take to get my family out of the scenario and the situation that we're in. So when that didn't work, and we'll probably touch on that later, but when that didn't work, I didn't have music. I wasn't particularly talented in music, and I wasn't going to become a criminal. So when you exploit those three options, it's like, what's out there next, and what then do you pursue? Because you don't have a family member to show you various careers. You don't have a mentor to guide you down a certain path. You have the gangsters on the estate, and you have people that I always use the analogy of, like, there's rich gangsters and poor graduates, right? It's less of two evils. Do you go for the rich gangsters, or do you become poor
Mm.
graduates? Those are the two things that you saw on the estate. So now, being in the position that I'm in, yeah, I'm definitely speaking from a place of privilege, but I still try to understand as much as I can the whole dynamic of a lack of visibility, because I still feel like it's still like present. It hasn't dimmed down. There are a lot more opportunities, and there are a lot more um, sort of institutions and various different organizations that are providing more opportunity, which is great to see. But I still feel and see that visibility is still limited for certain people.
Mm. And you said something here, but you said that like the ends of the estate is sort of like um, a poverty driven cave where people don't know where the key is. Right?
Mm.
It's hard to get out. Like, what exactly did you mean by that?
A lot of the things that we did when we were younger, and also speaking on behalf of my friends as well, a lot of the correlating themes was decisions were made because of poverty. You sit down and you think, okay, why did we do the things that we did, or why were we so interested in the things that we were interested in? And it always boils down to wanting to get ourselves or our families out of the environment that we were in. So people wanted to become footballers because they saw that if I become a footballer, this God given gift of mine will provide me with enough money and resources to get myself out of poverty and my family out of poverty. People wanted to do music for exactly the same thing. People wanted to pursue a life of crime for exactly the same thing. So when you look at the sole factor or the main factor why people on my estate were doing certain things, it always boils down to poverty. Of course, there are certain factors that lead people down a certain path, but when you rip back the layers, and this has happened through various different conversations I've had and looking intrinsically within myself, you see that that was the main denominator, right? So what I meant by that expression was we were all, particularly on my estate, in this environment. We all started on the same sort of starting line, and there's different routes that you can take. But all of those routes is like you're finding a different key to get out of that. And sometimes some routes are easier than others. Like the criminal route is a lot easier than the sort of academic route, or going down the sporting route, or whatever it might be. So when you see that this route is a lot easier to go down, people are making a lot more money down this route. You can see that you can provide for yourself down this route. You can see that your mum is probably not earning the most amount of money, and you can look after your family by going down this route. A lot more people are going to go down a route that unfortunately will lead them to trouble. And that's something that I saw. My estate, my estate and my surrounding estates, I've lost 5 friends to knife and gun crime, and 2 handful of my friends have gone to prison at least once. So this trajectory is all too common. But I've also seen a lot of people, go down a sporting route and do relatively well, go down an academic route and do relatively well. But I've seen that a lot more people go down the criminal route because it's just the easier route. But boiling down to your question one more time, it all stems from that poverty. So it's almost like we're finding a key to get out of that, and poverty is that central point that we're trying to escape from.
Yeah, no, it's mad fascinating how you say like the different keys and different routes. But I always feel like, yeah, I agree with you by the way, but I always feel like why sort of like education, right? Is that a key then that you said that you took that unlocked doors for you? Was it that education piece? Because I feel like it's looked down upon education, because I even sort of look down upon education. You're kind of, if you have a good upbringing, very, very fortunate that my mum poured and invested a lot into me. So she let me know from like primary school, right? Grammar school, you need to get into grammar school. I didn't get in, but still done the 11 plus test. GCSEs, you need to get good GCSEs, you need to get great A levels, right? It wasn't so much about what job you need to get, right? It's just emphasis on grades, education, be the top in your class. And I never really understood what that meant was until I got into sixth form, where I was like, okay, there's some applications here, minimum 3 A's. Okay. I got that, or predicted this. You can get a teacher reference. Then I don't know, Russell Group universities. So like this is sort of the people they look for. You're applying for summer programs at Target, Oxbridge, they accepted me straight away. I was like, oh, okay. So sort of those grades were my key, my personal key. And I didn't even know what kind of doors I could have been unlocking, but I was just breaking down doors when I started to list some of the things, and it sort of spurs you on. So for me, and I see a lot of my sort of the youngers and sort of young people, but that education piece it's not even a viable key for them. I don't understand why. So was that a lack of education to know what education can do for you, or do
Yeah.
you feel like the music scene, the football, and just other things are more lucrative?
You mentioned something, and I think your story is quite fascinating. But when you were speaking, I almost saw you speaking from a place, not a place of privilege, because that's not what I'm going to say, and that's not what I mean by that, but speaking from a place whereby your mum was incredible in giving you that guidance, right? Because somehow she knew, right? She knew about
Yeah.
level plus, she knew about the importance of education. People, not like myself, but people similar to me, and particularly around my area, we didn't even have that, bro. We didn't
Okay.
even have people to tell us that. I didn't know what Russell Group was until I got to university, believe it or not, right?
Mm.
I didn't know about Target Oxbridge. I didn't know. the importance of A levels. I didn't know about grammar schools. I didn't know what grammar school was until I got to university, right? So all of these different things, we don't know that when we're growing up. Because even if someone tells us study in school, the person that's telling us to study in school, they're not people that we're aspiring to be like, right?
Mm,
They're not the people. If you walk down the street and you see someone that they're an XYZ job and you don't aspire to be an XYZ job, you want to be somewhere else. You want to be somewhere where you're making a good living for yourself. If someone of that caliber, let's just say, was to sit down and talk to us, then that's the visibility that we're looking for, because we say, if that person done it, then I can do it because I've seen it. Whereas if someone that is, I'm not going to name drop certain careers, but if it's an XYZ career and they come and speak to us, we're like, but you're not there yourself. So how can you be telling us to do something and you haven't even done it yourself, right?
yeah.
And that's ignorance, that's naivety, that's on our part, because we shouldn't be, you know, ranking people's caliber in order to give us advice. Advice can come from anyone, and I guess we needed to be humble to listen to that. But when you're young and you're in that environment, again, bringing it back to the environment whereby you don't have many resources or you don't have much money or whatever it might be, you're just looking for the best way out of it. And if you, like I said, see the rich gangsters and the poor graduates, you're like, why would I want to go down the education route when I see that the people that went down that route are poor?
Mm,
Why don't I just go down this route where I can see that the people that are going down this route have what I aspire to have? And it's all on what you see, right? Your understanding, especially for us, our understanding was quite limited. So, to your point, when I was going down the sort of academic route, which I really started when I was 17, by the way, I started from ground zero because I didn't know about grammar schools. I didn't know the importance of A levels. I didn't know how important Russell groups were. I didn't know that these institutions or certain institutions targeted people from certain universities. And if I didn't go to those universities, I was already starting on the back foot. These things were all hidden to me, right? Or it wasn't available to me. So I had to start from a certain level. And, fortunately, I was able to climb up and do the things that I did. But to your point, those things, number one, aren't given to you. Number two, you don't have that visibility to know that, okay, I need to focus on my education, I need to do this, or if I do this, that's a trigger point to do this. We didn't get any of that. It was, look, we've seen a couple ballers on the estate, they've made it, they're living good, we want to become a baller. Or we've seen the musician, we want to be a musician. Or the gangsters on our estate are living quite good, we want to be one of those guys. That was the three sort of big routes that we saw, and unfortunately education wasn't really one of them at the time.
Yeah, no, that's powerful, and thank you for even like letting me know, because I think that's so important about perspective, and you see that you have a different perspective than I have, and it's great because in these conversations we can learn from each other, and I feel like this is another reason why I started a podcast, because like there's so many conversations that I have behind closed doors that helps me personally get to some certain places, and then people ask me like, oh, how do you get there, or mentorship or XYZ, but it's sort of like if you can just learn from other people and people can learn today as we delve in. So for you it wasn't like there was like no visibility, but it's sort of fascinating because I want to understand sort of like, so when did that major switch come into you? Because I feel like personally, just from what I've seen, just talking for myself, like everybody in life goes through a switch. I call it a switch. There's a moment in time where whether you have no visibility or not, but it's like something's got to give. I mean, you talk about your sister, right? So maybe you didn't start your academic journey until you're 17, but maybe your sister was started a bit early, or she was a bit more academic than you, right? I still believe that there's something where we can have a switch in the sense that I want to go into this direction, and for me personally, I remember, so I done NCS program, so I was again fortunate my school had brought in some speakers and they talked about this national citizen career program when you go out of your area, or you go to like, we went to Kent personally, and that's where we sort of like, you have accommodation in the forest and you do activity. You're just in a whole new different environment, and it's fun. It's like year six or whatever when you go to trips and PGL or whatever. So I went there for the summer, and I remember we're having a great time. Then there was a call that happened, and literally everything switched in instance because we got a call, and one of our friends, back at home basically got stabbed, and we heard news that he passed away. It was I've never experienced anything like that, just even being in the environment and looking at everybody, you know, it was distraughtful. But this was in the summer, and I remember just picking up. You know, I've never told anybody this, but I remember just coming back. You know, it was just crazy. You're going to different people's houses. You know, you're going to all sorts of different things. But it was August, and we're collecting our results, right? So this is GCSE, right? I remember collecting my results. You know, thank God that you know I got you know good grades, right? And I remember making a decision. Wait, I can go to a sixth form way out of this place. So,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
and it literally tailored my decision. And I actually went to school in Essex. I went to Upminster, and I feel like again that was just a start. That was sort of my switch. Like it changed the trajectory because I was then open up to careers and other things like this. You know, Insight Days and Bank of England, Deloitte, all of these things that I read in your book that you were fortunate enough to sort of you know dibble and dabble in. So that was sort of my switch. So for you, what was your switch?
My switch came when my father passed away. So it was I was playing football at the time, so I was playing at quite a high level, and I signed like a contract when I was 16, and I was fortunate enough to be able to study. So I was living in East London, traveling to a place in deep in Surrey every single day, to play football and to study. And halfway through the contract, you know, and studying, my I remember it was a Sunday. It was actually Father's Day, 2000, and I want to get this date right, 2013, Father's Day 2013. And my dad woke up and he came into the living room, um, and he was a diabetic, so we assumed it was his diabetes playing up. He didn't feel too well. He just sort of dropped down on the sofa. You know, he looked quite pale, struggling to breathe, and I called my mum, who was in the kitchen, and I said, "Mum, dad doesn't look too well." And I left because my mum said, you know, she's gonna call the ambulance, and you know, they're just gonna come, and she thinks it's diabetes, so she'll be fine, nothing to worry about. Went to the hospital that same day afterwards just to check up on him, and I'd never been to a hospital before, so I didn't know what any of the machines meant. I didn't know what was good, what was bad, what area was good, what area in hospital was bad. So I walked in and I saw him on the bed. He had tubes around him and machines with numbers ticking along on the screen. And I still thought it was his diabetes, and I didn't pay too much attention to it. Went home, went to training the next day, and I called my mum and I said to my mum, "Can I have the hospital details because I want to go see dad?" And she said, "Oh, come home first, and then we can all go together." So I went home and I dropped my bag. I went to the living room and I saw my aunties there, and I was thinking, "What's going on here? Why is there so many people in my house?" And my mum was just sitting there, and I'm thinking, "Let's go to the hospital. Why is everyone just chilling here?" And she, like, there was a quietness for about 5 seconds, and she just said, "Look, dad's dead." And I was thinking, what's happening here? And she received a call at 3 a.m. in the morning saying she needs to rush to the hospital. I was still asleep. So she knew all this time. And I went to college still thinking that he was alive. And I went to training still thinking he was alive. And I got home and I was told that he was dead. And that point there was the trigger for me. Um, so he passed away because he was addicted to alcohol, and his liver, kidneys, and everything just internally just messed up because the consumption of alcohol. And at that point, I had a conversation with myself because I said, I need to do something to look after my family now. And I felt like the onus was on me. I don't know why. No one put this pressure on me, but I felt like the onus was on me. And I sat down and asked myself the question, if football doesn't work, Reggie, what are you going to do? And at that point, football wasn't going too well anyway. So I gave it up, 17 years old. And that's when I started to pursue different careers. And similar to what I said at the beginning, I didn't have visibility into careers and opportunities and all of these things. So I'm starting from ground zero. But that was the trigger for me because that's when I started to look outside the box because I didn't have, like I said, I didn't have an uncle or a cousin or a friend or anyone that was anywhere near somewhere where I aspired to be. So that's when I had to do my own primary research and I had to look for myself. So to your question, when was the trigger for me to really change things up? It was when my dad passed away. That's when I started to look into different careers and you know, used the resources that were close to me, Google and various search engines and different platforms, and started to ask myself the question, what can I do to look after my family, amass wealth, and just be in a position whereby I'm not having to worry about money anymore, which is something that my family and I had to do for such a long time. So that was the trigger for me.
Yeah, and you said, I think you mentioned it, how like you put a lot of pressure on yourself in order to do that. So do you feel like you had to step up and be like the man of the household, and like you're now the provider?
I felt like that, yeah, I did, but I don't know why I felt like that. And maybe it's that toxic masculinity trait that I think a lot of men have, including myself. But I, because my mum works extremely hard to look after the family anyway. At that point, my dad wasn't working much because he was made redundant and he had quite a bad drinking problem, so he wasn't really working much anyway. So it wasn't like he was the main breadwinner and I had to take over the reins from him. It was just that I escaped the conversation with myself for a long time. I never sat down with myself and said, Reggie, what do I actually want to do? Or Reggie, do I want to play football or do I want to look after my family? Like, what am I doing? I never had that conversation with myself. So when that event happened and that trigger moment happened, I had a lot of thinking time. I remember I went out the house as soon as my mum told me the news, and I ran to a church in my area, and I just sat there for hours, and I just had time to think, and I just thought about everything, and I said, okay, how am I going to deal with this? What plans am I going to have? Why do I feel this pressure on myself to provide for my family? And some of the questions are still unanswered today, but I felt that onus and that pressure to look after my family. And I think once that happened, that was when I started to make decisions and started to push things forward. So why I felt like that, I honestly don't know, and I still kind of don't know until today. No one put that pressure on me, but maybe it's that stigma of being a man of the house, or maybe being the only male in the house. Now I felt that pressure, and I said, okay, let me go and make something happen. I
Yeah, yeah. No, I think, yeah, it's a tough question actually. In terms of whether it was just sort of instincts, because actually, like you said, being that only man in the house, that male, sort of like you got to bring it. Who's gonna now bring in the bacon? Who's gonna bring home the money and make sure everyone's good? And I feel like I can see. Okay, so that was where you thought, now I need to take responsibility and I need to do some searching. And I guess that birthed your, the story that went viral. You went
yeah,
to the richest areas in London and you started knocking on doors. And powerful. I'm sure everyone knows the story, but not to assume people do. But so you want to just briefly quickly touch on that and exactly how that went?
yeah, sure. So based on what I said, now it was a point where I wanted to do my own primary research and find out how wealthy people amass wealth. In my head, it was like, there's a secret here. There must be a correlating factor. These people aren't just wealthy because they're wealthy, unless they inherited it, which is a common case, but they must have some sort of skill or quality or something that I can extract and extrapolate so that I can use it for myself. So, sitting in college computer room, and I Googled wealthy areas in the UK. So I was willing to travel up and down the UK to find this information, but I realized that a lot of it was within London. So I narrowed the search to wealthy areas in London, and I made a list of 5 areas, wrote it down on a scrap piece of paper, and I put it in my pocket. And the areas consisted of Gloucester Road and Bishop's Avenue and a few other places. And I put the paper in my pocket, and I wasn't gonna. It was just an idea at that point. It was just something that was in my head, wrote it down, and I left it. And it wasn't until I put on the same pair of jeans again, like a couple days or a couple weeks later, and I found the paper in my pocket, and it was like, I felt like it was a scrap piece of paper, but it was the list that I wrote down, and I just felt this unwavering burden on my heart to go and do this thing of just go and ask people, particularly on like as soon as possible. So I went like the week after, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna do this. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but I'm gonna at least try. So I went to Gloucester Road and started asking people on the streets first, what skills do you have that's allowed you to become rich. And of course, no one's stopping to talk to me. As you can imagine, a young black man in a hoodie, black jeans, and black Air Forces. And, it's weird. Like, and I didn't even understand how weird it was until after everything happened. At that point in time, I didn't even realize there was a stigma against me or that I fit a certain stereotype. I was so oblivious to all of these things. So asking people on the streets didn't reap the dividends that I was looking for. So I started to go to the different hotels in the area, and I had a conversation with this one man who I thought was wasting my time because I thought he owned this building. The naivety in me said, "Oh, this guy owns the building. Let me go ask him." But he was a concierge, and asking the question, and he's talking to me for about 10 minutes, and he wasn't my target market. So I tried to leave the conversation as quickly as possible, but I couldn't. This guy's just talking and talking and talking, and in the end, I left. 10 minutes I thought was wasted, and I'll get back to that point in a minute. But I had a conversation with him, and he wasn't my target market, so I left. Went across the road, found a guy in an Aston Martin, and I asked him the same question. What skills do you have, or what skills do people have to live in this area? And he gave me some great advice, and he also gave me £40 for asking him the question. And again, that £40, I mention it because it plays a big part. So now I'm £40 richer, and I'm walking around Chelsea asking random people on the streets how they become rich. Not the most normal thing in the world. But again, not getting the right responses that I wanted. So I decided to go and knock on people's doors, right? And the reason why I did that was because either people had to open the door to tell me to go away, or they had to open the door to give me the advice. Either way, someone had to talk to me. So I'm knocking on all of these doors, and people are telling me to go away. Someone's threatening to call the police. No one's really giving me the advice I wanted. But I knocked on a specific door, and it was a buzzer. I pressed the buzzer, and there was an intercom with a camera so that the people can see my face before they open the door. So the person speaking to me, and it was a lady, and she says, "Oh, how can I help you?" And I said, "Oh, my name's Reggie. I'm from Newham, and I just want to know what skills you have or you had that allowed you to live in this area." And she comes to the no, she locks off the intercom, and I'm standing there thinking, is she going to come back or do I leave? So I said, "Give it 20 seconds. If she doesn't come back, you go to the next door." So she opens the door now, and she asks, "Is this part of a school project?" And I said, "No, I'm by myself." So she invites me into her house. And that was really surprising for me because a person that she doesn't know invites you, like she just invited a stranger into her house to have a conversation. And that for me was weird, but I felt it as a sign that things are like something's going to come of this. I didn't know what, but the fact that that had happened, I felt like something was going to come of it. So I'm in a house and her husband walks in, and her husband was, it was like equivalent to like a CIO, like Chief Investment Officer of the largest asset management company in the world. His official title was Global Head of Alpha Strategies. So he worked really closely with the global CEO, and he was on the exec team, and it was for Blackrock, right? So the asset manager Blackrock. At the time, they had $4.7 trillion in assets under management. Today, they have $10 trillion in assets under management. So it was, the largest asset management company in the world. And he's talking to me, and we're having a conversation. But the reason why I mentioned that 10-minute wasting of time with the other guy was they had just, so the Price family, the people that were talking to me, they had just got into the house 5 minutes before I knocked on that door. So if I had knocked on that door 5 minutes earlier, I would have completely missed them. So that conversation I was having with that guy for 10 minutes, who I thought, "Oh, what a waste of time." If I had just left that conversation straight away and I continued with the same chain of events, then I probably would have got to that door 5 minutes earlier or 10 minutes earlier, and I would have missed them completely. So that in itself, I felt like was a blessing in disguise. Had a conversation with them for about an hour, and then Quinton emailed me like a week after saying I'll come into Blackrock for an insight day. I didn't own any smartwear. Right? I didn't own a shirt, trousers, shoes, or anything. I had a couple tracksuits and a whole heap of trainers, right? But I used the £40 that the guy gave me to go and buy the smartwear, right? So to me, that whole chain of events was almost like divinely orchestrated for everything to happen exactly how it happened, Right? I didn't have smartwear, but I had £40 from a random stranger to go and buy a couple shirts and a tie. I met this guy who I thought was wasting my time, but in the end, it was almost like allowed me to get to that door exactly when I was supposed to get to that door. So when I went to the Insight Day, that Insight Day led to a work experience, and that work experience led for me to go to university, and that's when the journey really started for me. So
Wow, that because it's funny because I have read this, but now I'm hearing it. It's still so powerful every single time. It sounds to me there was like divine intervention in your life, like
mm,
things just lined up accordingly. Obviously, it took your work.
yeah,
Like if you didn't move from your sofa and get into London, none of this will happen. So it's just like you sort of had that trust or that faith. You got into the right place. You played your part. You got some divine intervention working with that made sure things were sort of lining up for you.
yeah,
And you talked about sort of how you started your career. I think
yeah,
someone recommended a book called The First 90 Days,
yeah,
where it talked about how to really break into your career. And now, what, 7, 8 years into your career, like there's so many people like me that I'm starting my graduate job actually. Probably when this comes out, I will be already working. So for you, like you've had so much experience now. So if you were to sort of just rewrite that or like a little sort of snippet or highlight, what would you recommend for, young fresh graduates or even interns about to start their career? What do they need to be doing?
yeah. I'll take a step back before answering that question. I think for graduates that firstly are looking for internships. So when I got to university, I again fortunate enough, Quinton became my mentor, and I had another mentor called Abraxas, and they gave me great guidance. And went to university, and he was like, internships are like gold. You have to get as many internships as you can because it helps. So as soon as I got to university, I was like, remember when I was talking about the level playing field or starting line, right? And I felt like with education, I was so far behind because I didn't have that guidance and that visibility.
Yeah.
As I stepped into university, I felt that I was I was on the same level as someone like you, right? You had your mom and other people to tell you about UCAS points and university and all of these things. I now felt like I was on that same play because I had someone behind me saying internships, spring week, summer. When you apply for this, these are the courses you have to do. And I was so equipped so that when I went to university, my even though my first exam I failed, I scored like a 25%, which is a U. Right? I didn't even pass that exam. And I was so close to leaving university, but I had that guidance and that mentorship behind me. Next exam, I scored 84%. Exam after that, I scored 86%, getting first classes and 2-1s, and really found myself academically. And I managed to go through the whole 3 years, completing 5 internships, like 2 spring weeks. Did a summer. I had another summer offer at another asset manager. I did an internship at a hedge fund and various different ambassador roles and internships. And I was so on it at that point in time, right? And I think the best advice I can give to students that are looking for those type of internships is just start early and like if you're not in university yet, as soon as you get into university, the advice that someone gave me, which I will just reiterate, is try and do as many internships as you can and just start the ball rolling as quickly as possible. Seek guidance, seek help on how to write quote unquote perfect application, and just ensure that you're hitting the ball running as soon as possible. And if you're applying for internships in the conventional way and it's not working for you, try and find the back door. Some of the internships that I got, I had to like write letters to companies and hope that they will reply back, or I would cold call some smaller asset managers and pitch myself to someone and create a meeting that way and turn up. And I had to find innovative ways in order to get this experience because I knew that internships were like gold. So for anyone that is not on an internship here or is due to be looking for them, start them early. But if you're not getting success in the conventional way, then try and look for a back door, however that looks like for you. To your question, for anyone that's starting an internship or anyone that's going into these roles, the book was really helpful because one of the biggest takeaways I took was just the concept of feedback. And if you're on a summer internship or you're starting a graduate program, I think more so on a summer because it's a short amount of time, it's like 10 weeks. Try and get feedback as much as possible and really apply that because that 10 week can set you up for the next year. You probably know more than anyone, right? You do your spring, you do well in your spring, you get a summer. You do your summer, you do well in the summer, you get a grad offer. That's how it conventionally works anyway. And feedback is so crucial because you want to know what your team, your colleagues, the people around you are not thinking of you, but you want to know what they think you're doing well at and what they think you need to improve on. Because you might think you're doing well. You might think, oh yeah, I'm so great at, Excel, let's just say, for example. But they could see that as your weakest point, right? So you need to be able to gauge what the others around you are thinking so that you can start to improve and enhance your chances of converting that summer or that internship into a full-time offer. And even on the graduate front, it's a 2 year program for majority of places, so you've got a lot more time. But my biggest advice for that will be network as much as possible, gauge the feedback as much as possible, apply the feedback, of course. Don't just get the feedback and leave it, but apply the feedback and understand that it's a journey. Don't try and race against anywhere else. Don't try and compete against your graduate class or your internship class because it's it's weird. It's not like don't try and see it as a competition. I need to outdo this person. I need to outdo that person. Focus on what you need to do. Focus on the people around you. Focus on the team that you're in, and just try to ensure that you're doing the best thing that you can do for your team, and ensure that you're just trying to enhance your network as much as possible. Your network is so cliche, and sometimes the saying is so annoying, but it's so true. Your network is your net worth, right? Sorry to sound like one of those guys, but it's so true because
No, it is.
your network is the thing that's going to open so many other doors for you, right? Be it internally or externally. So you want to ensure that you have a range of people within your network, particularly at the organization that you're in, not just in your team, but around the other teams. If your company is a global company, then even in global different offices, like not being afraid to ask people for a coffee, to ask people for 10 minutes of their time, to learn about people's journeys, about people's stories. That's one thing I can't speak highly enough of, just understanding the power of networking, understanding that your work and your team, like try and do well for your team and in your team and don't try to compete with others. And the last thing I'll say is play the game, but don't lose yourself. And I say that because, and again, I'm guessing that we're talking about finance and the corporate world because that's what we're in. And I can only talk in that industry because that's what I do. But in the industry, there's a lot of tick boxes that some people might consider, oh, if that person has this or has done this or whatever, then they're of a certain caliber. And sometimes us not being from a conventional or the conventional background to a lot of the people that we're going to be working with, it can be difficult to fit into that realm or we might not have that cultural or social capital that they might have that's allowed them to become successful. They might be into certain things that don't resonate with us, and we might think, okay, that means I can't engage in those conversations, or I'm not like these people, or whatever it might be. And because of that, we sometimes lose ourselves because we want to be like them. So then we behave like them, talk like them, act like them. We
Yeah.
lie about our interests because we want to be like them, whatever it might be. And one thing I've learned is you don't, right? You don't have to be like that. You're there because you are who you are, right? And of course, I'm not going to say bring your whole self to work because I know people love to say that, but no one brings their whole self to work, right? But bring as much as you can of yourself to work and understand that your difference is what's going to, A, separate you from everyone else in a good way, and B, people are going to look up to you and say, wow, Victor's in this industry and he's still Victor, right? Victor's in this industry and he's still himself. And they're going to say, if Victor can do it, then I can do it. And that's something I've had to learn as well because certain people, particularly those that are in like sixth form, they look at the industry and they see what the industry is like. There's a big ethnic disparity within the corporate sector. And they think, okay, if I go into this industry, do I have to behave like them or be like them, whatever it might be? No, be yourself, right? If you want to, like, I remember someone said, oh, I've got long hair. Do I cut my hair to get into the industry? No, like, be yourself. The old Reggie probably would have wavered, armed about it, but no, like, go in there and be yourself. And that's something I'm trying to echo as much as possible. Go in there, be yourself, because at the end of the day, yourself is what's going to allow you to make that difference. And trust me, by you being yourself, you're going to inspire so many other more people. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's
No,
what
I think That's so good, and you touched on so many points. I just want to resonate with networking. Even like for my story, my journey actually wasn't so conventional. So I never done any spring weeks. Fortunately, like I told you, so when I was in sixth form, it was that sixth form switch. I was hungry for information. I cannot put it no other way. As in, and anyone listening, when you want to better your life, for me personally, you need to be hungry for information. You need to, knowledge is power. There's so many things. If in my journey, your journey, that it's just knowledge. It's just you didn't know. For example, you said you were knocking on doors. You didn't know the attire. Right? You bought the Nike pouches to the internship. Clueless.
Oh,
Right?
the internships assessment days, man. It was bad. Like, came with my tie that was like so short, the Nike side pouch. My first assessment center, I came in like a black funeral shirt. Imagine you're going to a funeral and you're wearing a black shirt. I wore a black shirt with cream chinos and brown desert boots. It was like I was going to a motive. Like, it was just, I just got it all wrong. So yeah, you don't know what
But
you do. You're right.
yeah, but the fact is you were very in that room. So for me, so when I was craving for information, I actually applied for my first it was the first, because, and again it's just fortunate, like when you better yourself. So I was in a new sixth form, and we had a careers, I don't even think every sixth form have this, but we had a careers officer teacher, so they will send you emails. So when I latched onto one of them and I applied for it, it was like a 2 week work experience for an accounting company in London, and I was in Baker Street. Like, this is one of the first time I've been to London to, like, in a suit, basically. I swear to you, the only thing that went through my mind is like, I can get used to this. Like, I was hungry for information. Started apply like after that. Started applying for anything under the sun. Bank of England Insight Day, Deloitte, PwC, like so many different things. And then I applied for scholarship with a company. I'm a Swiss company, investment bank, and I got onto it. So before going into university, they sort of offered me my first internship, and I've been with them ever since, and gonna join them, full time. So that was just sort of that hunger for information, and it came through networking, like you said. And I think it's cliche, but it's not cliche. When some people are saying things multiple times, why don't be ignorant? Why not listen? Your network is your net worth. I'm saying it, you're saying it. Surely there's a clue. There's a clue here. And one thing I really love about you is that you encourage people to bring themselves to work, and I feel like it's easier said than done, in a sense, like, because it's sort of like maybe the fact that you got here wasn't because you were yourself. In the interview, was I wholly myself? I knew that, I'm trying to impress and I'm trying to get into this place. I need to figure out the language they speak. That's what I call it. When I come into a room, an event, anything, I figure out what language do they speak?
You're
What are
playing
they
the
looking
game.
for? Like,
Yeah, you're playing the game, and that's what it is, right? You're playing the game without losing yourself, and that's something that I wholeheartedly believe. If you can do that, man, you're in a good driving seat, man. You're in a good driving seat. And it sounds like everything you just said, it sounds like you're playing their game, right? You're in there, you're immersed in their game, you're understanding their language, but you're still keeping yourself. And I feel like that's crucial. I just wanted to add that in there.
no, no. And but so for you, I feel like how do you play? You've played it so well to the point that you've worked at a few different companies, and you
Yeah,
recently moved and started a new job this year. And
yeah.
won't mention the company, but massive achievement, if that makes sense. I personally, I didn't even know what the company was until I done some Google searches and someone told me this company. I was like, wait. I just had to look up the associate salary to know what
Yeah.
Reggie's on.
Very
I
good.
was like,
Very good.
okay.
Very good. Very good.
So how did you, my question to you, sort of like, what, like, did you play the game to get there, or did it come from sort of obviously you've had now media sort
Yeah.
of loads of
Yeah.
engagements? What was it?
I think, yeah, you are right. And I'll be lying if I said that my journey and my story coming out there wasn't like a benefiting factor. So my journey was publicized by BBC in 2018, and it's been 4 years now, and I think I've been on majority, if not all, of the major platforms in the UK and some abroad, right? And consistently been on them for whatever reason, either because of the story, or I've partnered with them to do certain campaigns, or I've worked with them to work on certain announcements, whatever it might be. So again, I'd be lying if I said, oh, that had nothing to play with it, right? There was a point where I think I did the BBC thing, and I think it was like 18 different job offers came in, just flowing in from large investment banks and consultancy firms, and so many different like opportunities were coming my way because they had seen it and they had probably looked at my profile and they said, "Oh, you look like a good. Do you want to come over?" And I'm like, I'm comfortable where I am at the time. Everything was going okay, so I didn't leave. But no, again, to your point, I'll be lying if I said that I didn't play a part. However, in terms of my journey in the external things, yes, they played a part, but I feel like I've also been able to show that I am good at what I do, right? So at my first grad place, I graduated, did a graduate program at Legal in General, investment management, and did 2.5 years there, and got promotion, and I did really well, right? My end of year grades for my graduate program were always in the top percentile. So in terms of the actual work I do, I try to make sure that the actual work I do is of good quality and is of a certain caliber. And I've also been able to balance that with the external things as well. So I feel like I wouldn't be able to do the external things if I didn't do my day job properly, because then it will counteract everything. Because if something goes wrong at work, I felt like they would always blame that on the external things. You're missing deadlines because you're always doing X, Y, Z. So for me, I put extra pressure on myself to deliver at work. If that meant that I was working later than everyone else, then so be it. If I had to, like for example, if I had like an interview or something the next day, or I was doing a project with another institution the next day, I would ensure that everything was done the day before. I did like the next day's work, or at least half of the next day's work on that day, so that I could just focus my time on doing the external stuff. And my workplace were more than comfortable with that. I was open with them with that as well. And because the work wasn't conflicting with the external stuff, it was a privilege, and it worked really well. How the new opportunity came about, I was headhunted. So a recruiter got in touch and said, this company's looking for an associate to help grow out their private wealth business. And I saw the name of the company and I thought, oh, right, okay, I know this company. But I genuinely, hand on heart, imposter syndrome suffocated me that moment. I thought, nah, they're not gonna hire me, right? But I said, put my CV forward anyway. So put my CV forward and I got the interview. And at that point, that's when I started taking it seriously. My whole room was filled with post-it notes about this company. I researched absolutely everything, right? And I took the interview so seriously. In the end, I had 8 interviews and 1 meeting. So altogether, I had like 9 different conversations and engagements for this one role. And then I got the offer, right? So it's a largest private equity firm in the world. I'm working in their private wealth business, covering all liquid assets, so real estate, private equity, private credit, hedge fund solutions, tactical opportunities, life sciences. I have exposure to all of that, which is great for my learning, and um, it's a great place for me to continue my career. So we'll see where that takes me. But to your point, yeah, the external stuff has played a part, but I think I've married it pretty well with the quality of the work that I produce as well.
Yeah, no, perfect. I think, see, this is what the valuable podcast is about. I feel like it's extracting that value, and I feel like what you've touched on is the way you got that internships is gold. I feel that the next gold we need to now hear is that balance. How do we balance one with the other? Because I've got friends, me myself, like what you're seeing is not just, it's a trend, it's a growing trend. We've seen graduates or students, right? They got YouTube channels, they've just blown up on TikTok, they're doing XYZ, so many different things, but there's this imposter syndrome of fear. Okay, but now when I enter work, they're gonna shut it down. Now when I enter work, they're gonna blame, oh, what, you're not this because you're too busy recording a video. Like, does that make sense? So it's like we're trying to understand, how do we marry these two, and especially in top, industries, top firms like this, is even moving past now imposter syndrome. It's more so like, yes, I know I can do the work, but is someone gonna doubt me because I can do their work and my work too? Why am I not allowed to do my work?
Yeah. Number one, you have to be okay. My best advice for this will be, find someone in said company that you trust, be it someone in the HR team or someone in like a line. If you're really close to your line manager or someone in the HR team, have an honest conversation to them and say, look, I'm looking to do this thing, and a podcast, let's just say, or I'm quite big on TikTok, and and I've been doing it for 6-7 months, and this is the trajectory that it's going in. Is this going, like, are you guys okay with that? Because some firms, believe it or not, they want to know just in case something comes back to them. You might say something on a TikTok, or if you're like a careers TikToker and you talk about careers and you talk about certain industries, whatever, you might say something that your company is not privy to, or you might say something that your company is not like, comfortable with you saying. This as an example, right? And you just want to know that they just want to know that you're saying and doing things that are in line with their policies, right? So I understand that. So speaking for myself, when I was at Elgin and I started to do all the media stuff and podcasts, and I did a podcast on BBC and all the rest of it, I just told my workplace that FYI, this is what's happening. You guys okay with that? And fortunately for me, they were okay with that. They got me media training. They set up, like, I had access to my PR team, and if I had an interview with a big platform and I wasn't sure on a reporter, PR team, a lot of them are ex-journalists, and a lot of them have contacts with news platforms and stuff. So they'll research on the person that's interviewing me to see if they've ever lowballed someone, or if they've ever asked a particular question in a certain way, what their agenda is. So I had the full back and the support of my company when I was doing all the external stuff. When I got the opportunity at this new place, I, throughout all of the processes, was open to them, because I didn't want to go into that place and then be like, FYI, guys, this is what I know. Like, I want you to hire me for all of me, right? Every single part of me. I had a podcast on BBC. I do these things in the media. I am writing a book. I have got a business outside of work. I do spend time doing this. I have other interests in all of these things. I'm letting you guys know. So if you're not on board, then just don't give me the job, because I'd rather do all the things I'm doing now and be happy than I come in and you guys are on my back about all these other stuff. So being upfront, I think, is the first thing. And I think 9 times out of 10, your company should be okay with it, right? 9 times out of 10 anyway. I think the second thing is what I said is just ensure that you are over delivering, because more eyes will be on you when you're doing external stuff. We are in a side hustle age, right? Millennials, Gen Z, all of us, we're not the same as the generation that were, ahead of us, right? They had one job, they had a nice pension, they would work, they would retire, they'll live off their pension, and they'll go have a nice life. Us, the retirement age for us will not be 60 years old, right? We are not a one salary, or we are not a one income stream generation. With the access to the internet, with so many different resources, with so many different platforms that we can engage in, I would even say 70% of all the graduates that are going in will have another source of income, be it small or big, right? So number one, it's okay to have a side hustle. It's okay to have something external, but just make sure that those things are not impacting your work, because I'm telling you now for free, that will be the thing that your company or people around you will say is distracting you if you are missing deadlines, or if you're not doing the work up to a certain scratch. So I would encourage people to have a side hustle. I would encourage people to get involved in things outside of work. I'm involved in, I think I have 5 different things on the go, right? And that's come with practice, don't get me wrong. I've had to learn to balance, and it does mean that you're working longer on other stuff, and you're finding time throughout the day and on the weekends to do the things that you're passionate about. But the dividends are worth it, because once you start to see things flourish and you start to see things working, you won't regret putting the extra hours in. So to your point, I encourage people to do it, right? Everyone will have a side hustle, will have something external, but just ensure that your employer is aware, or someone in your business is aware, and B, don't let the external or the side hustle things affect your work. So.
Yeah, no, I think that's so refreshing to hear. Like, somebody that's doing it can just, relay that information. And I thought another thing they said that was so pivotal, and to me it's even quite shocking. Like in that interview, you brought it's either me or nothing, if that makes sense. And that goes back to what this podcast is about. Like you saw value in yourself. You understand what you can bring. Right, because I think a man who didn't understand the value that they possess, the value that they can bring, wouldn't go with that decision. Wouldn't be like, you know what, I know what I've got going on for myself. I know the value I can add to this firm. I know everything. So you're in that, I guess, confident sort of position. Can I say?
Yeah, I think it boils down to what I said in the beginning, and we touched on was purpose, right? And for me, working in, I've always said, and I mentioned it in my book quite a bit, like working in the industry that I'm working in. At first, it was quite selfishly to make money, look after my family, and do all the things that I wanted to do. But over the years, I've been working for like 5 years now, and the amount of traffic of emails and messages, and it's so humbling to read. And I try to read all of the messages that I receive. Of course, I missed quite a few, but as much as I can, I try to read them. And a lot of the things that people say is just so refreshing and inspiring, and it motivates me to just understand that this journey is no longer just for me, right? It's not just me going into work or whatever, but I want someone else that's in sixth form to say, oh, if Reggie can do it, then I can do it. Or the fact that Reggie did it, or the fact that Victor did it, that means that I can do it. And understanding that purpose, and understanding that, I serve a greater purpose and just going to a corporate building and working, that's allowed me to understand my value and hold true to my values. So when I was interviewing for this new firm, and I was talking to them about the external stuff, if they turn around and said, you have to stop doing everything you're doing and focus on this place, I wouldn't have done it, right? Even though the salary was going to be more than double, right? Even though the bonuses were going to be crazy, even though the perks were going to be insane, even though the brand of that company was going to open more doors for me in the next couple of years' time, whatever it might be, if they weren't on board with what I was doing, then that is not aligned with my purpose. That is not aligned with who I am, and I would not have taken it. Or I would like to think I would not have taken it, right? Because I know what I'm on this journey for. So to your point, right, it goes down to purpose, and it goes down to why you're doing this. If I was just like, I'm happy to work, and I'm not really on the side hustle thing and having things external, which is fine, by the way. I'm not advocating that everyone should have something. If you're comfortable with doing what you're doing, then by all means you do it. But I've got other stuff on the go, and I wanted to really focus on that and hone in on that. And if they weren't on board, then that wasn't a company for me, irrespective of the brand, the money, and all of these things. There was going to be another company or another opportunity to come, and I'm so confident that that next opportunity would have aligned with my purpose in a greater way than this company if they didn't allow me to do the things that I'm doing.
Yeah, and purpose, sort of like the thing that you've been created or destined to do. And I know it's because you've touched on purpose, but it's already exactly what exactly is your purpose? What is it?
My purpose is, I use the analogy of sending the elevator down to bring people back up. It's about allowing people to have the visibility, the guidance, and the hope that I received once upon a time. Um, I did a TED talk once, and I talked about the power of mentoring, right? And mentoring was one thing that really just transformed my whole life, my whole career forever. And if I could take elements of that mentorship that I received from one person and expand that to hundreds and hopefully thousands and hopefully tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of people, then that will be me fulfilling my purpose. Right? My purpose is about allowing more people to have more opportunity, opening doors, excuse the pun, for more people, um, and just allowing more people to start on a greater playing field or start further along the line than they would have started if they hadn't come across me or the things that I'm doing. So at the moment, I feel like my purpose is just providing and creating more opportunity and opening more doors for people. Hence why I named the book Opening Doors, because it's more than just a title. It's more than just what happened to me. The book and the events that happened within my life were a result of what was to come, right? So the door opened for me, and now my purpose is to open more doors for other people. So yeah.
Powerful, powerful, powerful. You heard it from Reggie, and and I'm just fortunate and privileged enough to just host conversations like this, and allow people to listen and get moved, because that's how it started for me, just listening to sort of information, and the fact that you're so open, it still strikes me like I still need to dig deeper, because the fact that you mentioned, oh yeah, so you can over deliver at work, and you're working on 5 different things, just launched a book, got it published, doing a bit of mentoring here and there. What's your day like? And you still remain so calm, composed. Because I know people, I see people who are doing a crazy amount of things, and it's great, but there's what's the word? They're over capacity. I look at them, and they're not still. If
Yeah,
that makes sense. You're still. I don't know where it is. Tell me where it is. Where is it?
I take it day by day, and some people have a long term plan, like, oh, my 10-year, 20-year plan. I've always struggled with that. I've never actually honed in on my 10-year plan. Or if you ask me what do I want to do in 20 years time, I couldn't answer with a true answer anyway. I like to take things year by year or week by week and see where it goes, because things change so much for me. Like, one email can change my whole outlook on the year for long, like forever, right? And I take it year by year and I take it week by week, but I also have people around me to help me, and I think that is so crucial. Like, I've got an agent, and she's incredible with everything that's happened and everything that's going on, and she is just so like, she's the one that's got me a lot of the different, like, the book deal, and all of these things that have happened. She's been instrumental to that. I've got like a little team because of the agents and stuff, and those people have just been instrumental for me. So you see me doing these things, but there's a lot of people behind the scenes and other people that have helped me along this journey, right? So, whilst I'm at work doing my actual work, these people are the ones that are, reading emails and are having conversations and having Zoom meetings on my behalf and sending me updates. And, I'm saying, okay, yeah, let's do it. Or that doesn't really sound like something I would do. So, number one, people around me have been really, really helpful. Number two, I like to say things year by year or month by month or week by week, and just try to take things as in my path as slowly and as accurately as possible. And number three, I always boil things down to my faith. And the reason why I say faith is because my faith is the one thing that I think, number one, keeps me grounded, and number two, it's the thing that gives me assurance that I can take on this capacity, because I'm a big believer that I wouldn't be given anything that I can't handle. So knowing that these things have been given to me, it means that I can handle them, and it's just about me finding a way to handle them. And I have to remember that these are things that once upon a time I prayed for, right? I prayed for opportunities like these. I prayed for an opportunity to take my family out of the environment we're in. I prayed for, you so many different things. Like, when I was writing the book, I was just like, God, if this is something that, you want me to do, then by all means, let's do it. But it was just on my heart to document things from my own perspective, not what BBC had done or Sky News had done or ITV had done or Steve Harvey had done. I wanted to do it from my own perspective, and tell the story from very beginning to very end. And God, if this is what you want me to do, then by all means, let's do it. And even the way that happened, that's another podcast for another day. But how that happened was just
Yeah.
so divinely orchestrated. So, three things that helped me to your question is people around me have been super supportive, and I'm super grateful to them. I try to take things in my stride, short term thinking for the most part, in terms of, like, what am I doing this week? Focus and nail this week, and then the next week, what am I doing? Nail that week, and then take it week by week. And then the last thing is just having that unwavering assurance in my faith that if something is given to me, then I know that I can. It's given to me for a reason. I can handle it, and I shouldn't shy away from the fact that that thing is given to me, because once upon a time, those are the things that I prayed for. So,
Yeah, powerful. Amen. And the fact that God's granting your prayers, you're Christian, I'm a Christian as well. So it's so encouraging as well, when you see other believers, other people in the faith, and they're not shying away to share it.
mm,
Because at the end of the day, I believe that, God created all of us. We go back to this thing about purpose, right? I didn't create myself. So
mm,
I couldn't tell you 10 years, 25 years. I didn't, if I created myself and I created my plan, I'll
yeah,
be living lavish. But unfortunately, that's not the case. So it's sort of like, you sort of have to rely on somebody, right?
yeah, of
And
course.
have that sort of anchor. And I can see it for you, that's your faith, and you've had the privilege to go back to well, not go back, but go to your church and share your journey. And I think you
Yeah,
do mentoring with called VYG Victory Youth
yeah,
Group, because I actually have a friend that's part of the church. So I think even yesterday or the other day there was at a football match
yeah.
playing with
That,
the
that,
police or something.
that charity football match against the police. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, were you there?
No, no, no. I went to a prison yesterday, so I was doing some mentoring stuff in the prison.
Wow.
Um,
You even work in prisons? What's that like then?
no, so I went to Wood Prison. It's a youth offending prison, and it's part of a group that I'm with. It's like a group of guys, led by a guy in Parliament called Lord Michael Hastings. You might have come across him before. If not, then he's a great guy, great man. Was former global head of citizenship at KPMG. Was global head of public affairs at BBC at one point. Um, Now he's a lord in the House of Lords, and he created this group. And this group does stuff in prisons, and it does stuff for the community and stuff. And we went into a Wood prison yesterday to mentor 15 guys who are in prison for whatever reason, and just to show them love, show them hope, and to help them see that this isn't the be all and end all, and this isn't where your journey ends. This is part of your story and a part of your journey. Because some of the guys in that group have been to prison, right? Some of them have had their troubles with the law, and they're doing some amazing and humbling things today. So we go in there to give them hope, talk to them, give them guidance. I did a book signing in there yesterday, which again was incredibly humble. So we gave them 3 copies of the Opening Doors book. And that's the second time we've gone. So the first time we went was a couple of months ago. We actually played football against them. So we played a football match against them. We won 9-6, and it was incredible. It was an incredible time to just chop it up. We had breakfast with them, had roundtable conversations, played football, came back inside, spoke again to them, and that's where we built their trust. And then we came back yesterday, and we're gonna go back in July. And yeah, so I didn't go to the football match, the VYG versus police, because I was in a prison. So yeah,
Yeah.
incredibly humble.
Yeah, but still, like you're still again, you're just on the field, like you're on the ground, right? If that makes sense. A lot of
Mm,
people in your position now who sort of, I'm sure you know, you've made it out the hood, right?
mm,
There's no reason to really go back. Let's be honest, like,
yeah,
but you're not you're not one of the top, I don't know, 1% whatever earnings,
mm,
just salary wise, but you can still go to kick it with some prisoners playing football, or at least give them that light, that encouragement, and that hope. And I genuinely do believe, like after they really finish reading your book, it's just
mm,
not even finished. Like in between, for me personally, just certain chapters, you just get that light, get that hit, and just be like, whoa,
mm.
okay, I don't. Why? How does he think like this? Maybe I need to better myself. And I think so powerful. And God bless your agent then, whoever put this put this deal together.
Yeah.
And you even launched work experience with the
Yes.
book. So
Yes.
how did that? Tell me about that.
Yeah. So when we were publishing the book, again, the whole concept of opening doors, and what I feel my purpose is to create more opportunities and open doors for others. So one of the things that I wanted to do was create this work experience program for people that wouldn't have visibility into a certain industry, and in this case, it's publishing. So I talked about how when I was younger, all I saw was music, football, or crime. I didn't see a way out of that, and once I did, it was all guns go. I was ready for it, and I went for it, and fortunately, I got it. And I wanted to create what the same visibility that someone gave me. I wanted to create it, but in a different industry, publishing. So we created this work experience program where we partnered up with my publishers, Bonnier, my agents, Creative Access, and another charity that provides accommodation, because we wanted to make it UK wide. So applications were open for anyone over the age of 18 that could spend the summer um, working. So 2 weeks will be at the agency. So my agent's firm that does TV, literary, and film agency, um, and then 2 weeks at a publishing house, which is Bonnier. So they'll learn all things to do with publishing. And UK wide, so if someone lives in Durham, for example, and wanted to gain access into publishing, they'll come to London, accommodation will be free, travel will be free. We've covered all of that for them, and they still get paid, right? So we created that work experience, um, and we wanted to open more opportunities for more people. So that's going to be happening next month, for one lucky winner. So one person, people have to apply. Where they're having interviews at the moment, and then one person will be given an opportunity to conduct that work experience. And the plan is to expand that even further. So this time round, we did it in publishing. Next time round, we want to do it in, I don't know, engineering or something, or do it in finance, or we want to do it in marketing, we want to do it in physics, whatever it might be. We just want to open opportunities to more people in different industries. So hopefully this will expand to become a thing. It'll be like a yearly work experience summer for people that otherwise wouldn't have that opportunity, and we'll see where that goes. So yeah, the Opening Doors work experience was great. It's still underway, so like we finished the application, but interviews are going on, and yeah, one lucky person is going to have a month long paid work experience, and hopefully again that would open more doors for more people. So
Wow, and you're just living out your purpose. That purpose you described to me, sending down that elevator and bringing people up. You're literally creating the work experience, the programs, and I know that couple years, this would be something to really, really talk about,
yeah,
and track. I mean, lastly, I just want like the fact that you just mentioned you had that team behind you that's helping you. How does someone maybe get a PR agent
yeah,
or get a team together? It sounds so. I feel this is what I did say it, but like black community, a lot of people are missing. Like, how do we
yeah.
get access to these things?
I can only talk about how I got access to it because I don't know how anyone else does it. Actually, no, I'll answer that in two parts. First part is one way you could do it is like your friends around you that support and buy into your vision. If you feel like there's someone that can really help you, then reach out to them and ask them for that help. Like I read Stormzy's book Rise Up, and I'm not sure if you read it, but that book is incredible because it talks about Stormzy's journey. But there's one part in that book that really sticks out to me, which is Stormzy's friend Toby, who's his manager, and Toby's, according to the book, Toby's really smart, like a really really smart guy, and he was on a graduate program at Jaguar Land Rover, um, and this is before Stormzy's prominence and rise up to what he is today. But as things were moving forward, Stormzy was looking for like a manager, and he went to him and said, "Oh, I'm looking for a manager." And I think Toby was like, "Oh yeah, I can go find one. That's fine." And Stormzy's like, "No, I want you to be my manager." And he believed in his vision and said, "You know what? Let's do it." Quit his graduate job at Jaguar Land Rover, went to support Stormzy before Stormzy was what he is today, and you can see the rise in what Stormzy is today. So I think the first thing that you could potentially do is find someone to maybe just help you on the side. Like, look, I've got this idea. Could you help me out and see where that goes? Right? It might not work. I'm not going to say every like that scenario works all the time. It might not, but that could be one way to start. A second, the way that I did it was I reached out to people online, like cold emailing, cold calling agencies, and just saying, look, I have this idea. I think it will work. I just need you to buy into me. Let's have a coffee. And you know, of course, agents just rejected my call at first. But there was one agent that said, let's come into the office. Let's have a talk. And I met them, sat down with them, 2 hour conversation, and then we signed. And that's how I got my agent. Was by cold emailing them, went to the office, had a meeting, had to sell myself, and we signed. And it's been 2.5 years, and it's worked very, very well. So that's how I did it. It's just about reaching out and having the courage to reach out. And fortunately, it works for me. I have heard some stories where people have management or agents and it doesn't, but again, you won't know unless you try. So I encourage people just to, if you've got an idea, if you've got something that's heavy on you and you need that support from people, be it a PR person or an agent, Google it, research people, find out where they are, and try and struck that meeting and see where it goes from there. So
Thank you for like just that information in terms of the PR agency. I think even I haven't actually read Stormzy's book, so maybe that's the next one I need to pick up. But I think that's so true, because I feel like sometimes we just need that push. And just to like, I've learned so much from you. I'm sure people listening learned so much from you. Just to sort of wrap it up, I know like people have their free word or just free things, like, so I know you actually Amani Simpson. And
yeah,
again, I was fortunate enough to actually come across him, and I'll never forget what he told me one time. He said, you should learn, earn, return. I was
Yeah.
like, okay, learn, earn, return. And I feel like that's exactly what you're doing. I think in your book, you mentioned the guy that gave you the £40, or maybe it was a different person, but he said, again, get education, get work experience abroad, and work hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you were just to leave it off, like, what's the three things that you would now encourage people?
Our, number one, embrace rejection. Um, rejection it comes to everyone. Never take rejection personally. Never take rejection as the end. It's all part of your journey. So number one, embrace rejection. Number two, um, mentorship. If you can find anyone that can guide you, provide you with that visibility, then do it. And that's not a thing of emailing 10 people and saying, be my mentor, but just be more alert and engage into certain conversations and in certain rooms where if you see someone that's like, wow, I really resonate or really draw to that person, then have the courage to go and ask that person to sit down for 5 minutes. And sometimes maybe don't lead with be my mentor, because mentor is a very heavy word, right? When you hear mentor, you think time, you think commitment, and sometimes it can scare people. But just say, look, can I have 10 minutes? And that 10 minutes will lead to another 10 minutes, and that will lead to another 10 minutes. And before you know it, you've got someone that is, sponsoring you and providing you with that mentorship. So number two will be to seek mentorship. And number three, um, the hardest moments always create the best stories. So if you are going through hard moments, use it as, yeah, this is the part of my story. Never take it, again, similar to the first point, but never take hard moments that you might be going through, whatever it is, as the end goal. Like they always make for the best story. So yeah, those are three things I would say.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, literally, for coming on the podcast. The valuable podcast, very, very valuable individual and great story. Humble, just so much wisdom that you've dropped today. So I really, really do appreciate it. Now, just where can they find you? I'm sure if you type in Reggie Nelson, you can just find them everywhere. You can obviously purchase the book, but is
Yeah.
there any sort of platform you use more specifically?
Um, Reggie Nelson _10 is my Instagram handle, my Twitter handle. Reggie Nelson on LinkedIn. Um, and the Opening Doors book is available in all good bookstores. So Amazon, WH Smith, Waterstones, Foyles. Type in Opening Doors by Reggie Nelson. Um, you can order the book online, and there's also an audio version as well. So if you're not the biggest reader, I've narrated it, so you can listen to the audiobook as well. So that's where you can find me.
Powerful. Covered all angles. There is no excuse to not latch onto this information. Thank you so much, Reggie, for joining us on the Valuable Podcast.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.